Hello there, football fans. Welcome to the Mercurial Trequartistas Gamecast, your weekly dose of Premier League passion, predictions, and proper football talk. By way of introduction, I'm Dadan, and joining me is my co-host, the man who reminds you that football is a craft and not just a spectacle. Mark, how are we feeling?
Oh yeah, all good, all good. And so far, I haven't been caught with any binoculars, headphones, or recording equipment outside any training grounds.
Well, there's still a few days until the weekend, so let's see how that goes. But so, what's on the menu today? As always, we will start with Premier League talking points. We will then move on to our second segment, which is fantasy football tips for the weekend ahead. And we shall round things off with our third section of the Obscure Facts segment. And this is our podcast's equivalent of a cult away end following. So small, loyal, but growing louder every week. So let's start with Premier League talking points, diving straight into it. Mark, if we start with Man U and Michael Carrick. I understand that Man U's senior executives, they are expected to recommend Michael Carrick to Sir Jim Ratcliffe as the club's permanent manager following his successful spell as caretaker. And I think he's been praised internally for stabilising the club after Ruben Amorim's dismissal. He's looked to back youth development and he's taken quite a long-term and strategic approach to management and recruitment, despite only being brought in temporarily. I would argue that Carrick's been the leading candidate since guiding United to Champions League qualification, and he's lifted them from, I think, seventh to third in the Premier League. Um, so I understand that Man U, they will enter formal talks with Carrick over a full-time appointment. So he's won 10 of his 15 matches. He's beaten City, Arsenal, Liverpool, Chelsea, and also Aston Villa. And since joining, he's led the Premier League in points collected since mid-January. Do you think he's the right guy for the job, or is there someone else that Man U could or should go for?
Well, two defeats in 15. It's hard to argue with. Certainly stabilised the club, like you said. The only word of caution that I would say is that they have been here before with an ex-player, stabilised the club, had a good sort of caretaking period. But then once the job was offered, it didn't quite go to plan. I still think they're still missing a striker. They've struggled to get anybody getting into double figures over the last few years. The points tally this year, 65, could get another six. Would be comparable to the season before last. I think Amorim did end up getting into the 60s points wise. Last season, there was a 20-point drop off, but it's it's hard to argue not to give him the job unless there's a really big name that's free, willing, and keen. Uh, he's gone and given the board a big decision. From the look of it, they're gonna go with the carrot route, but it's it's a tough one. I'd say cautiously optimistic might be the phrase for the supporters, but yeah, it's it's difficult to argue not giving him the job right now. It's been a good run, started with a bang, and yeah, Champions League qualification, which didn't look like it was possible when when he took it on.
I'd agree with you. I think he will certainly be popular with the supporters. I mean, he's a full player. He knows the club inside out. But the way he's turned things around, I mean, I think when Amorim was dismissed, the team really lacked confidence and sort of an understanding of how they wanted to play. But he very quickly sort of injected both confidence and clear plan of how to sort of do things. And, their first game, as you say, he started with a bang. I think they beat City in their first game, and the whole world just like stood up and sort of took note at that point, just going, "Whoa, what the hell happened here?" I think they put was it 6 goals past City. Some were disallowed, but I can't quite recall the final score. But no, it's been impressive.
Yeah.
But I'm just you also mentioned caution in that. I know that he spent time at Middlesbrough, and apparently his sort of reign there was quite similar in the first season or after joining, he did really well. And it kind of dipped a bit after that. And perhaps there could be parallels with what happened with Ole Gunnar Solskjaer a few years ago. But I think at this point in time, he's definitely the right man for the job. And there's no one else that springs to mind. I mean, they've tried, the route of the Van Gaals and the Jose's and, experienced coaches who have an impeccable record. They've gone, for Ollie, and that didn't quite work out. So, but I think it's the best option for Man United at the moment. So
Yeah, I
let's
think
see how
the
things go.
Manchester derby, it was kind of the ideal first game for him, really, wasn't it? It was one where the players wouldn't have got away with not putting a performance in. The fan score, I think it finished 3-2 in the end. But yeah, it's probably the ideal opening fixture. If they'd have lost, then you know people would have just gone, well, Manchester derby, City doing
Yeah,
well, that kind of thing.
yeah,
Man United, new manager, post crisis. It,
yeah,
it it wouldn't have been a costly defeat, but by turning around and sort of like winning the way they did, it was a nice little statement. Um,
yeah,
Even if they're looking at a World Cup manager after the World Cup, then that would be a risk because it'd be a truncated close season for him. So this is probably the safest
mm,
option
yeah.
that's available to him right now. So it makes sense. It's actually a sensible decision. So
Agreed. Agreed. Let's wish them well, and let's see how things go next season. It will be very, very interesting to watch. We move on to story number two. So, the West Ham Arsenal game on Sunday. Apparently, it sparked a proposed consultation over the summer. So, the PGMOL chief and former copper, Howard Webb, he confirmed a post-season consultation will take place on excessive grappling in the penalty area and how it should be handled by officials. So, I think Webb was responding to controversy after West Ham's late equaliser against Arsenal, which was disallowed following a VAR review for a foul on the goalkeeper David Raya. So the decision, it was decisive in Arsenal, sorry, for Arsenal, I should say. They won 1-0. And it's clearly had a knock-on effect for both teams who are very much at opposite ends of the Premier League table. We will come on to this in a moment, but Webber said that the VAR intervention was clearly correct, stressing that interfering with a goalkeeper's arms or hands prevents them from doing their job and must be penalised. And I believe that other permutations and combinations of other possible fouls they were reviewed, but Webb said that the most significant and decisive contact was unquestionably the foul on the goalkeeper. What do you reckon?
well, it's a bit of a mess, isn't it? That the whole sort of grappling thing has gone completely out of control this season, and it's just becoming a farce at every possible corner, set piece, whatever. And yeah, they're going to have to, pardon the pun, get a hold of it. Otherwise, it's just going to get worse. Um, the whole sort of obstruction thing. I'm there's some parts of what Webb said that I agree with, and some parts of what he said I'm not convinced by. He's sort of suggesting it doesn't matter about the other fouls. That was the key one. But there are fouls before that while the ball's in play. Now, normally you can grapple. The holding has been allowed while the ball's out of play before it's launched in there. But for me, that corner's hit, and there's still fouls going on before the goalkeeper foul. It is a goalkeeper foul, but Pablo kind of ends up there because he's been fouled into that position, and he's trying to, you know, compete for the ball coming in. So if you're looking at the first foul, and there's at least two beforehand, before the keeper foul, then where's the argument for? Well, that was obstruction. There's still an obstruction law about sort of blocking off players from getting to the ball fairly. In the old days, you would see a lot more indirect free kicks given in the box, but the referees. have seemingly been reluctant this season to actually enforce anything.
Yeah.
And players and teams have taken advantage, some more than others, and it's made the game a mess. Personally, if I wanted to watch rugby, I'd be putting the rugby on. They've got to sort it out because it's just going to get messier. And teams can see that the referees are struggling to make decisions, so yeah,
Mm.
messy stuff. And I wouldn't mind if it was completely brought to an end. If you just turn around and went, no holding. If you're holding a player, it's a foul. If you don't want to give a penalty for it, give an indirect free kick in the box. And if you've got multiple players holding onto each other, then look at the first hold. Who held first, and then just give the decision that way.
Mm.
What do you reckon, Tate?
I I mean, we've spoken about this about I think about 8 or 9 weeks ago, but do you think the use of AI could sort of aid this? I mean, because it will analyze things really, really quickly. Assuming there's enough sort of camera feeds and sort of well information being fed into it, it should sort of be able to sort of work out what the rules are, what needs to be applied. But putting that aside, I mean, what you're saying is true. It has affected games, a lot of games this season, and well, to use another pun, the referees they need to get a grip. It's as simple as that. And the consultation, I mean, I actually welcome it because this is something which it just needs to be addressed as quickly as possible. Because I mean, along with VAR and several other things, it's taking away from the enjoyment of the game. Not just for you,
Yeah.
not just for me, but from a lot of fans. So,
I think it's the inconsistency as well that's been applied for the same rule. I mean, they're turning around and going, well, that was the right decision to disallow the goal for that foul on the Arsenal keeper. And yet it wasn't that long ago that a goal was scored against Leno and he was being fouled
mm,
and that was not given. So
yeah,
the goal was allowed, the foul wasn't. It's effectively the same thing. The goalkeeper's impeded. So yeah,
yeah,
generally I think the rules do need a very good looking at. I mean, handball, grappling, all that kind of thing. Just simplify it.
mm,
And if you're turning around and you are just making holding an offence, it will soon stop. But that requires referees to sort of enforce
yeah,
it and sort of really stand up to what's going on in the penalty boxes. And at the moment, if they're
yeah.
concentrating on, oh no, that was the key hold, who's to say what a key hold is? I mean,
Mm.
any kind of grappling in the box is going to stop somebody getting to the ball. So if you're just going to be selective, then the
Yeah,
game will suffer as a spectacle.
yeah,
And how long it took to get to that decision in a key game because they're having to look at so much.
yeah,
But I suspect if you're just looking at the first offence and just going, right, well, that was the first hold, that's where the decision goes. All the rest of them either don't happen or, happen in a limited capacity.
mm,
But this consultation is it's a long time coming because it's been a mess at corner kicks and set pieces this year, and it's putting people off. If,
yeah,
if you're sending your spectators away feeling disgruntled or unhappy or sort of thinking, well, what's the point? It's all hanging on a random decision with about 20 different holes in the box. Then yeah, it's it's a crazy to think that we've got here. I mean, you look at some of the corners back in sort of like old footage. None of that's going on. Even when Burnley were lumping the ball in the box or Stoke were lumping in long throws, there wasn't that scale of grappling and wrestling happening.
yeah.
And that was Burnley and Stoke, and they were very good at what they did.
Just a quick point about you mentioned about West Ham, their need for points, and Arsenal and City as well. So, yeah, both like West Ham and Arsenal, they had a dire need to like try and pick up at least 1 point. I mean, Arsenal they benefited from the well, like from what happened, but. In terms of, I mean, if we focus initially at the bottom of the tables, I mean, who do you think is more likely to like go down at this stage? I mean, that to me on Sunday, it was a killer blow for West Ham. It really was. It's made their task a lot more difficult, and I fear for them at this point. I genuinely do. I mean, we are very fond of West Ham as a club and of Nuno as a person, but I think that was very tough, and I don't think they will stay in. I think Spurs are in much better form at the moment. But what do you think?
I mean, it's a sickener for them. It is, and it's going to be a real test to see how they recover from it and respond in the next couple of games. I think West Ham are putting together a package where they're going to submit various refereeing decisions through this season and show how often they've been hit by this kind of thing. So, they're clearly not happy. They've clearly not got faith in decisions being made properly. And I think it's fair. There's been a pattern of inconsistency throughout the season that PG Mall have tried to sort of defend by going, yeah, well, this is it, this is why, da 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 da. But there have been mistakes, and there's been too many of them. So I think they need to look at the way they're applying the rules and how they are being interpreted. For me as well, when VAR was looking at it, I thought they were a little selective on what angles they were giving the referee. They were concentrating on the goalkeeper thing. They weren't giving him any clue what happened before. So he's coming to the decision, okay, it's the goalkeeper one that's the key thing.
Yeah,
At one point in the exchange, the referee out here, what am I looking at? Because he doesn't know what VAR are trying to show him. So yeah, the practice of checking things out needs to be streamlined. The
mm,
rules probably do need to be looked at. And, ultimately players and teams need to have a bit of a look at themselves because they've kind of contributed to the whole mess as well by employing these kind of tactics. So it's ugly, it's unedifying, it needs fixing, and it could be costly. Spurs are probably the favourites to pip it. If it's a point difference or one result different, then West Ham are going to feel absolutely sick because they were fighting away in that game and
yeah,
very unlucky not to get something out of it.
agreed, agreed. We move on. Story number three. So we move north of the border in Hearts' quest for the Scottish Premiership title. So last night, Celtic stayed in the Premiership race with a last-minute injury time penalty, which was highly controversial. So a 99th minute VAR review, again VAR. This led referee John Beaton to award a penalty to Celtic after a challenge by Motherwell's Sam Nicholson, which replays clearly suggested struck the head rather than the hand. So Iheanacho, he converted for Celtic from the spot kick, and what looked like being a 2-2 draw, which was highly beneficial for Hearts if that was the final result, turned into a last minute 3-2 Celtic win deep in injury time. So Hearts head coach Derek McKines, he referred to the decision as being disgusting, saying his team felt that they were up against everyone after the call. The late penalty kept Celtic 3 points behind Hearts, and it forces the Scottish Premiership title race to a final day decider on Saturday. So, what Hearts need now is, with the title going to the last game, they need to avoid defeat at Celtic Park to become champions for the first time since 1960. Mark, I watched the Celtic game last night. The penalty was filthy. That's the only way to describe it. It was just wrong. And again, it's like another poor VAR decision. Sesko versus Liverpool, where the spin of the ball clearly changed. Here, I mean, it's almost the reverse of that. I mean, if you watch the header, there's no way somebody could. I mean, well, it was Sam Nicholson. The level of power he got on that header, it would be impossible, even if it glanced off his hand. And, on the subject of VAR, we've just been talking about West Ham v Arsenal, but again, like they cannot get it right. Um, Heartbreaking for Hearts because it would have been wonderful had they, that would have taken the pressure off them. But they've not lost to Celtic once this season, and though they have to go to Celtic's ground and try and pick up the victory, they are well placed to sort of pick up the league title, in my opinion. But any thoughts from you?
Yeah, I agree. It is kind of an extension of what we've been talking about with the grappling. Handball is a rule that needs to be cleaned up. It's too messy. There's no way that you can argue with 100% certainty that it was deliberate handball. And I've seen freeze frames, I've seen the videos. From all of the videos, it looks like it's head contact. I think I've only seen one still where it looks like, oh, okay, that might be the hand. But that's a big might be. So it's not clear and obvious. So how does it get given? Um, it was a tough one for Hearts. But there's still there. There's still a chance to do it. But yeah, as bad as VAR and some referee decisions have been in the Premier League, there's always somewhere where it's worse. So tonight we present Scottish VAR.
I was just watching it. I mean, they showed the replay again and again and again, and because the pundits on the panel, they were all united saying it was just a terrible, terrible decision. It was just unbelievable. And the referee,
Yeah.
he was asked to like check it once again, but it was anyway. Um,
Yeah, and
it's a
also
bit.
I think his hand is kind of up there with his head, but he's jumping with a defender. If anything, the defender's shoulder is sort of raising his arm up.
Mm.
I don't see it as deliberate, and it's certainly not clear and obvious.
Is it clear and obvious? And rightfully, as you say, it wasn't, not by a
No,
long shot. So
no,
how the referee, how he could have given it, it was just but anyway.
yeah, bizarre. But yeah, anyway, on the plus side, there's still a shout. You're right, Hearts haven't lost to Celtic. It's been 2 wins and a draw. Um, they just need to not lose, and the title's theirs.
Yeah.
So yeah, it will be an exciting fixture.
Yeah.
It's debatable whether it, it should have already been decided or not. But yeah,
Mm.
all eyes on that game, and
Yeah.
hopefully it's not a dodgy VAR decision that's the key factor in the in the last match.
Fingers crossed. Fingers crossed. Well, there you have it. We will, of course, keep an eye on all these stories in the weeks ahead. We are close to the end of the Premier League season and the Scottish season. I think it ends this coming weekend, but we will speak about all this stuff. And as we've mentioned before, we will be here over the summer as well. Mark, if we move on to segment two, the fantasy football section, I'll just do a run through of the games which lie ahead well, over the weekend, but also into the middle of next week as well. If we start with Villa versus Liverpool, which has been moved to Friday night, I think Villa's home form is still fairly competitive, and I expect them to take this game due primarily to Liverpool's absolutely abysmal form. I think the key scorers are going to be Ollie Watkins, Morgan Rogers, and Salah if he's fit for Liverpool. These are his last two games that he can actually play in. So I think if he's fit, he will try and get a few minutes on, and let's see what happens. But I expect Villa to take this one comfortably. Then we have Man U versus Forest. I think at home, especially Man U's attacking rhythm is much, much better than away from home, in particular through central areas and set pieces. The key players here are Bruno for Man U and Gibbs White for Forest. But I know he was injured last weekend. I don't know if he's fully fit, but even if he's about 75% to 80%, you would expect him to play. Then if we move on to Brentford versus Palace. So both teams attack well. They do score goals, but they also do leave gaps at the back. But Brentford at home are pretty strong usually. I think the key players here are going to be Thiago for Brentford, and for Palace, I'm going to go for Mateta. I expect Brentford to take this, so maybe don't pick Palace defenders. After that, we have Everton versus Sunderland. So Sunderland in the last 6 to 7 weeks have really dipped in form, and they are, a really big and physical team. But Everton, to my mind, are an even more physical team, and plus there's home advantage as well. So I expect Everton to take this one. The key players are going to be Beto or Barry for Everton. I expect them to score. And if you do fancy a punt on Sunderland players, Brobby and my personal favourite, Mukiele, who's done really well in the last few months. Then we have Leeds versus Brighton. I expect this to be a really good game, fast paced. Leeds are always stronger at home, but Brighton are tricky as well, and they have scored some pretty good goals and picked up some very decent wins on the road as well. I think the key players are going to be Calvert-Lewin and Okafor for Leeds, and Okafor in particular, he's been outstanding at home in recent games. And for Brighton, it's worth having a punt on Welbeck and Gross, both in pretty good form. Then we have Wolves versus Fulham. The only player from either team I can recommend here would be Wilson, who's still chugging away nicely. After that, we have Newcastle versus West Ham. So West Ham's need for points is urgent, but Newcastle still can be quite strong at home. I think the player to recommend here is going to be Jared Bowen. He's going to be really fired up to sort of try and keep his team, his long-standing team in the Premier League. So I can see this one perhaps being a draw. I'm not sure West Ham can pull this off, but let's see what happens. Then we have Arsenal versus Burnley. The next two games are just do or die for Arsenal. It's as simple as that. I expect them to win against Burnley. No questions asked. So the key scorers or players are going to be Gyökeres, Saka, and if you fancy punt, David Raya in goal, who's been really, really good in recent weeks. Then the final two fixtures are Bournemouth versus City. Again, City also, they are challenging for the title. Their need for points is massive. I expect them to win this. Doku, Haaland, Semenyo, who finally came back into his form against Palace last night. They're the ones to go for. And the final game, which I think is midweek next week on the Wednesdays, Chelsea versus Spurs. Roberto De Zerbi has introduced confidence, a decent tempo, and some sort of structure into the Spurs team. They were just lacking it so badly as and when he arrived, but he's been chipping away and he's done a good job. We both hinted that we think Spurs are the team that are going to survive. Chelsea are kind of out of sorts. I know they drew with Liverpool last weekend, but the form of Liverpool is just so poor that I don't really see that as like any kind of a marker. Expect Spurs to be fired up. I expect them to go for the win and to get it here. The key players will be Richarlison, Telles, um, and possibly Porro as well, because he does pop up, score often from set pieces. Any thoughts, Mark? Gone through a lot there.
Well, it's the time of the season where you can get those weird random results. You know, a few teams already know they're safe, uh, or they've already got the season objectives, and yeah, Spurs Chelsea. I'm actually gonna think Chelsea are gonna nudge it. I think Chelsea would absolutely revel in making a fellow London club's season worse.
Well,
So,
both
you
teams
know,
don't like each other at all. The fans
exactly.
dislike each other and
Uh,
the clubs in general. And so, yeah. Segment three. Do you want to run us through this week's obscure fact, please?
oh, okay then. Well, we've already discussed about Michael Carrick being a caretaker and potentially getting given the job. So this week's obscure fact is about the caretaker manager. There was a caretaker manager 6 times for the same club. We're talking about Mr. Blackburn Rovers. It's Tony Parks. And between 19, yeah, in the 1980s onwards, he acted as the caretaker manager no less than 6 times for various managers, saving Blackburn from relegation at least once. And his time at Blackburn only came to an end when Mark Hughes's he decided to bring in his own staff. Sadly, they neglected to tell Tony Parks through proper channels, and he found out via his daughter, who found out via the radio.
Hmm.
So that wasn't great. But via Adita at Blackpool, where he was also caretaker manager, he did return back to Blackburn as a scout. So yeah, there was a happier ending there. Sadly, he did pass away earlier this year in April, but there was a nice sort of fundraising match between Blackburn and Blackpool, which helped raise money towards his healthcare towards the end. So yeah, I don't think we're going to find a caretaker manager that's acted in the same role that many times for the same club. That was this week's fact.
Well, thank you for that very heartwarming story. I think, if they had their way, both Ryan Giggs and Frank Lampard, they would sort of try and match that for both Man U and Chelsea, respectively. But I think Tony Parks will have a record for a long, long time. So that's all we have time for this week. So until the next time, keep the faith and do like and subscribe to our channels on various social media and get involved there if you are so inclined. We are back sometime next week with more TMTG goodness, and it'll be the final week of the Premier League season then. So till the next time, until all are one.